This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. Officials in Nigeria reassure the country's millions of voters that elections won't be delayed again and will take place on Saturday. Sierra Leone's foreign minister dismisses claims that a commission of inquiry into corruption in the former regime is a witch hunt.
No. And I expect them to say that because they don't want to be held accountable. What we have done there is so transparent. We are a government that believes in the rule of law.
Hakuna Matata. It's not only a wonderful phrase, but a bit of a language growing in popularity. Why are so many people speaking Swahili? Also in the program, causing a buzz in town. They call him the father of bees. The insects love him so much, they've even moved in with him.
I don't see myself as any different from other people, but I accept it if it's meant to be.
And in sport, Europa League action. Could Arsenal and Gabon's Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang make his first start in the competition since October? Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. We begin in Nigeria, where officials are reassuring voters that elections will go ahead on Saturday after being postponed by a week. Now, one of the key issues in the campaign is security, with nearly 2 million displaced by violence in the northeast of the country. While thousands have fled recent attacks by Boko Haram and its offshoot, Islamic State of West Africa province, our Africa editor, Fergal Keane, reports now on the plight of people in a conflict that has dragged on for almost a decade.
The exhaustion of the new arrivals. They'd just come, safe now after the terror of being driven from their homes. But this camp, built for 8,000 people, now has 4 times that number. Hadiza Ibrahim, mother of 5, her husband is missing and may have fled to neighbouring Chad. We went through hardship beyond imagination, she says. This mother of 6 gave birth to twins during her escape. Can you tell us what has happened to your family? Why are you here?
We ran from Dauro to escape Boko Haram. I spent 2 days in the bush, and while there, I gave birth to twins. I had no clothes to cover the children or to cover myself.
Person after person has come up to us to complain that they don't have the basic necessities of life in this camp. Tens of millions have been spent prosecuting this war, and still people are being driven from their homes, being terrorised. A new camp with proper facilities is being built to ease the overcrowding. It's situated on a half-built, abandoned stadium, itself a symbol of the waste that's characterised the rule of Nigeria's political elites. The election season has brought fresh pressures for the IDPs as Boko Haram and the local wing of Islamic State have stepped up attacks. These were mourners at a funeral 10 kilometres from Maiduguri. The dead, 14 people, were gathering wood when they were attacked.
It's lack of basic human needs that sent us out of our community. He had to go and hustle for us to eat, and despite the hustling, he didn't stop his education. He would work hard for us and also go to school before this really sad incident.
The government says the war is being won, but the killers were still able to ambush the state governor's convoy last week. And in Maiduguri itself, I met this survivor of a recent bomb and gun attack on a mosque. He points to the hole from the bullet that killed his neighbour.
That is the surprising thing that leaves us wondering how they got here. Did they come from the town or from the bush? That's what we're wondering. Wherever they came from, they didn't attack there. They chose to attack us here.
2 weeks ago, displaced people protested over their conditions. Stones and tear gas. But that anger has given way to weary resignation. Whoever wins this election, there's little expectation it will change these lives. Fergal Keane, BBC News, Maiduguri.
Tommy Oladipo, our Africa security correspondent, joins us now from Abuja. Tommy, are there specific measures that have been put in place for the people who are displaced?
Yes, indeed. The Electoral Commission says it has set up means for people to vote. There are about 400,000 displaced people who've been registered as voters, and they represent 8 districts or local government areas, as they are called here, and so they will be able to vote within certain camps for the displaced, and that's a way of the Electoral Commission catering for those who are not able to vote back in their homes where they've been, chased or have been forced to flee because of the insecurity.
So there's a lot happening right now in Nigeria, but what is this we are hearing about vote buying?
Well, vote buying is not a new phenomenon in Nigerian politics. Politicians and parties, political parties, have employed this means over the years. Obviously, it's against the law. It's illegal for them to pay to woo voters. And in fact, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, that's the anti-corruption agency here, has put out a reward for members of the public to expose incidents of vote buying. So this is something that has been a part of Nigerian politics, but the authorities are struggling to get rid of.
All right, so the Electoral Commission has come out to reassure Nigerians that the vote will take place on Saturday. What's the sense you're getting? Are they prepared?
Well, the head of the Electoral Commission, Mahmoud Yakubu, has come out and insisted that everything is in place this time. He's insisted that his teams are ready to hold the elections, and he says that it's not going to be postponed. Of course, Nigerians will be wary of that, especially considering what happened last week. And I'm sure people will think that preparedness will only be proven when they get out there at 8 in the morning on Saturday and polls are actually open and they're able to vote. But the Electoral Commission says this time, as they've said before, but they insist that this time they're ready.
All right, Tomi Oladipo for us there in Abuja. Thank you. Well, let's now take a quick look at other stories making headlines. Sudan's security forces have arrested around 24 opposition members who are preparing to deliver a petition calling for President Omar al-Bashir to step down. The Secretary General of the Community Party and leading members of UMA, the country's largest opposition party, are among those detained. Law enforcement agencies in Kenya are being called in to help recover more than $7 million from students who haven't repaid their loans. 74,000 people who should have started repayments a year after graduation are affected. The UK has announced a deal with the African Union to inject up to $40 million into prosperity and security projects across Africa. The money will be used to train peacekeepers in Kenya, assist free and fair elections, and support the next phase of negotiations for the African Continental Free Trade Area. Now, Sierra Leone is a country that's known for its reliance on mineral wealth, including diamonds, gold, iron ore, and titanium. They've been exploited for decades, but the country and the people have little to show for it. And now the government, which has been in power for close to a year, wants to change the emphasis to agriculture. In a wide-ranging interview, I asked the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Ali Kaba, what the plan is.
We want to make agriculture fashionable. What we want to do is that Sierra Leoneans must be the architect of this new focus on agribusiness. By growing the value chain, we are going to make sure that we provide the technical education for our young people to tap into the value chain. In other words, we need to circulate the benefits of agricultural investment within Sierra Leone. And in the past, what has happened is that, and what we inherited is a case in which communities felt marginalized or disconnected from the major investment project in their communities. Yes, they own the land, and we want to make sure that those who own the land are the first to benefit from it.
There have been some ongoing commission of inquiries, and there's a particular one that is into the issues of allegation by the corruption, by the previous administration, and some of the officials have blatantly refused to participate, and they are claiming this is basically a witch hunt by the current government. Is it a witch hunt by the current government?
No. And I expect them to say that because they don't want to be held accountable. What we have done there is so transparent. We are a government that believes in a rule of law. All we are saying is that We need to make sure this is evidence-based. If you have to answer a question just about how you spent, $50 million that came in for this particular sector, just tell us. That's all.
Their complaint is that it is not evidence-based, that hence the reluctance to take part in the inquiries.
Look, everybody who is paying attention to what's happening in Freetown today will know that every day we are talking about evidence. You can't run away from the facts. And what we are doing is to make sure that we put an end to the era of impunity. A country that has gone through a lot, with money coming in for Ebola victims, those monies disappearing in the pocket of others who had no business misappropriating that money. When you look at mudslide victims who needed housing at that time, and money coming in and disappearing in the deep pockets of those who had this insatiable thirst to misappropriate public funds, they have to come and tell us. By the way, we need the money to invest in our teachers.
So what guarantees are there, or what guarantee is there that this inquiry will actually yield results?
It is very easy. We get the money from them, we put it into government programs. I am confident that at the end of the day, people look back and say, these commissions of inquiry help to put the country back on track, to give confidence to investors that when you come in, we are not going to misappropriate your funds, to let development partners know that we mean business when you say we are going to be the government to protect the interest of our people.
Let's move on to another subject, because the government has declared a state of emergency for what they're saying is a spike in rape, especially among minors. And we're talking about such alarming numbers, more than 8,500 cases recorded last year. That's a rise of nearly 4,000. What's going on in Sierra Leone?
This is the particular issue that the president looked at and said, we need to draw the line here for this reason. So what is going? There's no excuse for this. That is it. Government says it's unacceptable, and because there's greater awareness now and the resolve of government, we are hearing more about it.
We don't know what the trigger is at all?
Well, I can tell you this, that you can look at it differently, but there's no excuse for it. We are refusing to even look at the... Look, you cannot do that because you came from a dysfunctional family. That is not an excuse. We are not going to entertain the idea that there's some rational explanation for it. This is wrong, and the president has made it very clear that we are going to deal with it head on and put an end to it and make sure that no girl in our country, no matter which part of the country you live in, will have to be afraid to go to school or to go to a health center because some idiot out there thinks that they are just there for their own satisfaction.
Now, police in the U.S. city of Chicago have said that the American actor Jussie Smollett staged a racist and homophobic attack to promote his own career. Mr. Smollett originally said he was assaulted by two men in January, but police claim he paid two Nigerian brothers to carry out the attack. He's been charged with filing a false police report and disorderly conduct. These are allegations that he denies.
Jussie Smollett took advantage of the pain and anger of racism to promote his career. I'm left hanging my head and asking why. Why would anyone, especially an African-American man, use the symbolism of a noose to make false accusations? How could someone look at the hatred and suffering associated with that symbol and see an opportunity to manipulate that symbol to further his own public profile?
This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come in sport, can breakdancing become an Olympic sport at the 2024 Games in Paris? I'm Sophie Ikenye and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top stories on this program. Officials in Nigeria have reassured the country's millions of voters that elections won't be delayed again and will take place on Saturday. Sierra Leone's foreign minister dismisses claims that a commission of inquiry into corruption in the former regime is a witch hunt. Now, today is International Mother Tongue Day, a day designated by the United Nations to promote multilingualism around the world. Many Africans, like myself, are fiercely proud of their mother tongue, but there is a worrying trend because almost half of the 6,000 languages spoken in the world are in danger, and every 2 weeks, an entire language disappears. Well, there's one language that's growing in popularity inside and outside of Africa. Salim Kikeke has been finding out more.
Students learning Kiswahili, or Swahili as it's known in English. This course is hugely popular and at least a dozen students graduate here in London every year, speaking the language fluently.
Natoka Marekani, nilijifunza Kiswahili nilipoenda Tanzania.
I am from America. I first learned Swahili when I went to Tanzania 3 years ago. I started studying it here in SOAS last August because I want to improve my Swahili.
My name is Moe. I'm from Japan. The reason I'm learning Swahili is because I was attracted by the African culture, like music and dance. So I chose to learn Swahili so that I can learn more about Africa.
Ninaitwa Jessica na ninatoka Ureno.
My name's Jessica, I'm from Portugal, but originally from Cape Verde. I'm learning Swahili here in SOAS because I think Kiswahili is a very important language in Africa.
With so many languages spoken across Africa's 54 countries, Swahili appeals because of its diverse history and its place as the most widely spoken language across the continent. And of course, it's a language that got a huge boost internationally thanks to Disney's hit film, The Lion King, popularized by the expression Hakuna Matata in its story about the Lion Kingdom in the fictional Pride Lands of Africa. The phrase has actually been trademarked by Disney Corporation, which caused no small amount of furore by some supporters and speakers of the Kiswahili language.
Even though it's not grammatically correct, it is not correct for a company to trademark our language or our culture, our inheritance, and say it's theirs. Today it will be these two words that maybe don't make sense to us, but does to them. Tomorrow it will be something else.
Spoken by over 100 million people in East and Central Africa, it's one of the official languages of the African Union, and there's talk of making it a language spoken by all Africans. South Africa has recently adopted it into its curriculum.
I go to conferences with fellow sisters from Africa. They speak French, I speak English, we speak, and there's nothing that unites us also as Africans. So our children need that also, to have a common identity with what is predominantly an African language, which is Kiswahili.
While there are fears that factors like globalization are affecting many languages across the world, Swahili seems to be taking a different stride towards uniting a continent and perhaps becoming a Pan-African language. Salim Kikeke, BBC News, London.
Well, we'll get a spot shortly with Mimi, but first, what is your mother tongue and do you often speak it?
It's Igbo from Nigeria. My mom actually has a go at me a lot of the times because I don't really speak it that much.
You don't speak it much?
No.
You should.
I know that's true.
Sasa tupate michezo, Mimi.
Asante, Sophie. The very few words in Swahili that I know. Now, you're moving on to the sport here, and we'll be looking at, we begin in football and the Europa League. It's the second leg of the last 32 ties, and in just a few minutes' time, Arsenal and Bate Borisov will kick off at the Emirates. The Gunners trail 1-0 from the first leg. They will have to do without Alexandre Lacazette, who was sent off in that match. That's him in training ahead of the game with top scorer Gabon's Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, who will be making his first start in the competition since October. With the fixture starting earlier than usual, Unai Emery was hoping that many fans would still turn up.
I don't know, but we want and we need a supporter. And I think if we can be one big atmosphere tomorrow for us is very important. And I think also the supporters want to watch our team playing the best performance possible. And for this reason, I think we need to do one feedback between the supporter and us.
Ghana international Emmanuel Boateng has joined the Chinese Super League club Dalian Yifang from Spanish side Levante. Details of the 22-year-old's contract have not been disclosed. Elsewhere and in the NBA, Cameroon's Joel Embiid will be out of action for at least a week with a sore left knee. Now, head of Kenya's National Olympic Committee, Paul Turgat, has apologized for the multiple scandals which surrounded their participation at the 2016 Rio Olympic Games. The former marathon runner took over in the wake of the scandals. A government probe revealed cases of misappropriation of funds, with 6 people currently in court facing charges. The fallout is still affecting the country's bid to get private partners as they look to Tokyo 2020. Turgat is calling for everyone to move past it.
For close to about a year and 2-3 months, we had been driving with the side mirror, with the rear mirror. And this rear mirror has actually weighed us down so much. Even when we want to approach our stakeholders in terms of sponsors and everybody else, they still refer us to these things. We need to move on. And that is why we're saying it has come to say, we are politicizing. This thing that it happened, we were not part of this. We need to move forward.
Still athletics, a great run from Ivory Coast Marie-Josée Talou at the indoor athletics in Düsseldorf, Germany. She set a world-leading time of 7.02 seconds for the 60 meters at the indoor athletics in Düsseldorf, as I mentioned on Wednesday. It was a personal best for her.
And I'm just happy for that time. I just do 4th competition in this indoor season, and it was not the main goal. The most important is World Indoor Champ in Doha this year, and it's the end of September, October. So I think it gives me more confidence to go and train very hard and to come in that competition to maybe have some medal. I don't know if it's gold, silver or bronze, but I know I can do it, and I'm going to train hard and come more bigger like that.
I love that. And finally, it's a topic that has been gathering a lot of reaction today. Is break dancing a sport? The organizers of the 2024 Olympics believe it is. They're proposing it should be included as a sport for the Paris Games. Have you tried breakdancing before, Sophie?
Absolutely. That looks like neck breaking, not breakdancing. What do you think?
Well, there's been a lot of reaction today. One being squash, for example. They've been trying to get it to be part of the Olympics, so they're not too happy that it's not being considered just yet. We'll have to wait and see in the future.
All right. Let's wait and see. Mimi, thank you for the sport. Thank you. Now, it's common knowledge that most beekeepers around the world choose to take up the hobby, but not Gosa Tafese from Ethiopia's Oromia region. The bees chose him. One day, 15 years ago, they turned up at his home and never left. And he says they love to follow him around, but he has no idea why. He told us his story.
People call me the father of bees or the father of honey. They came to visit and stay with me, so I consider them family. This hive alone used to produce 25 to 30 kilograms of honey, but I made it smaller. It's never been a problem for the kids, but sometimes it disturbs my neighbors. Because of that, I tried to get rid of the hive, but the bees came back. We don't have a house elsewhere, so we chose to live together.
My friends are afraid of the bees, so I have to go to their place to study. When I ask them to come over, they're afraid the bees will sting them.
When I traveled to 3 different towns, each time a colony of bees came to nest around me. I don't see myself as any different from other people, but I accept it if it's meant to be.
Absolutely not. It caused quite a buzz on social media today. But don't forget, you can get in touch with me on Twitter. I'm @Sikenya. But for now, thank you for your company. Bye.